The Rock Show is one of Blink-182's most famous songs. The first single off their fourth record, Take Off Your Pants and Jacket, The Rock Show is a pop-punk classic, and according to Mark Hoppus, he wrote the song in just 10 minutes. What's the song about and how did it all come together? I'll be taking a look at that in this video. Blink is one of the biggest bands in the world, especially in the late 90s, early 2000s. Their stardom was at its peak. But back in the early 90s, when the band was just getting started, things were not like that. As is the case with most new bands, Blink started out by playing shows in their local club scene. One of the clubs Blink used to play at in San Diego is called Soma. The venue still exists to this day, but it has since gone under extensive renovations. It's a much bigger venue than it used to be. Blink-182's song The Rock Show is largely based on their early days playing club shows, and in particular, playing at Soma. In Mark Hoppus' words, Soma was covered with graffiti. It stunk, it was made of metal, the sound sucked, and the toilets were always overflowing. It was the best. We loved it. We used to watch bands play there every weekend. Blink-182 began in this club. This song is about those days. One of the interesting things to me about Take Off Your Pants and Jacket is that the two lead singles, The Rock Show and First Date, were two of the last songs to be written for the record. Here's what happened. When Blink-182 were getting ready to make Take Off Your Pants and Jacket, over the course of about 3 weeks, the band had written a dozen songs. At that point, they invited Rick DeVoe to listen to these new songs, Rick DeVoe being their manager. Mark Hoppus recalls the following. He listened quietly to the tracks one by one. At the end, we turned to him with an "am I right or what" expectation, to which he said, "I think it's really cool, but I don't hear that thing, that Blink-182 Good Time Summer Anthem thing." Mark Hoppus and Tom DeLonge were both very upset with Rick DeVoe's reaction, and so in turn, Mark Hoppus wrote the feel-good song, The Rock Show, and Tom DeLonge wrote the feel-good song, First Date. I drove home, grabbed my guitar, sat on the floor, and wrote The Rock Show in 10 minutes. Tom drove home, grabbed his guitar, and wrote First Date. According to Travis Barker, the arrangement for The Rock Show was worked out in San Diego at the Famous Stars and Straps warehouse. Famous Stars and Straps, of course, is Travis Barker's clothing and accessory line. One of the interesting things about the arrangement of The Rock Show is that it's very classic punk influenced. On May 16, 2001, Danny O'Connor, a reporter from the BBC, had an interview with Mark Hoppus and Tom DeLonge, and he asked them about The Rock Show. It's not clear whether the following response was from Mark or Tom, but regardless, one of them said the following. I think it's actually as if we built a punk rock time capsule and went back to 5 years ago when we were writing songs. We wrote The Rock Show as a mid-tempo punk pop song about a girl, and it ended up being one of the better ones on the record. It's got the spirit of the Ramones and Screeching Weasel about it, but definitely influenced by bands like The Descendants and all the early punk rock bands. It's a really, really simple song, 3-chord punk rock song. The Rock Show was released as a single on May 22, 2001, a few weeks before the rest of the record was released on June 12th of that year. Now, 2001 was an important year for pop punk as not only Take Off Your Pants and Jacket was released, but also many other iconic pop punk records, including Sum 41's All Killer No Filler. The connection to Blink-182 here is that Jerry Finn produced both All Killer No Filler and Take Off Your Pants and Jacket. All Killer was released on May 8, 2001, 2 weeks before the Rock Show single was released. I did a video comparing Blink and Sum 41. If you want to see that video, it's linked in the description box below. One of the cool things about the music video for The Rock Show is that it foreshadowed a modern-day trend. There are YouTube personalities today who record themselves going around giving money away to random people. Blink did this in 2001, before YouTube existed. The music video for The Rock Show cuts back and forth from shots of the band performing a concert to shots of the band driving around in a van, being mischievous, and giving away money to strangers. The Rock Show video was really weird. We were running around trying to give money away to people. People thought like it was a scam somehow. A lot of people wouldn't take the money. It's very strange when you try and just give people things. Everybody's so protective, which I would be too if somebody walked up and tried to hand me $100. I wouldn't take it. It was very difficult for us to convince the label to let us do that video. They had this whole thing, I forgot what the original concept was. Every video they made, they wanted us to have a skateboarder in it, because they wanted us to be that SoCal skate punk band. Then I called like a few days before the video, a week before the video, and was like, just give us money and let us do our thing and it'll be rad. And we shot it with the Malloy brothers, who are great directors. We had to really put our door down and say this is what we want to do, and by that time we had the clout to do it. But it was a real fight with the label. And I love that video because of it. Back in the day, the video budgets were $500,000. Now, you're lucky if the video budget is $50,000 or $30,000 even. And that was a cheap music video for a band our size at that point. $500,000 is pretty standard. You know, videos were costing $1 million at that point for a lot of artists. As mentioned, the song does have a Ramones feel to it, which to me is one of the reasons why I consider this song an important track in Blink's catalog. Blink-182 is rightfully known as one of the definitive pop-punk bands, arguably the definitive pop-punk band, but as such, sometimes their classic punk influences get overlooked. And so I think it's cool that one of their biggest songs is a song where that classic punk influence is very prominent. And on that note, I want to read to you one more quote from that interview Mark and Tom did with the BBC in 2001. At one point in the interview, Tom and Mark were asked about how they feel when they're criticized by various people in the punk world for supposedly changing and becoming too commercial. This was their response. "I don't think we've changed. I think we've gotten better at what we do. We never set our sights on being anything other than successful in our own right. We sold a few records doing that, and we are happy, and we can go home and feel like we accomplished something. Then sometimes we can go places and people hate our guts. We sit at home and try to write rad little love songs about girls and stuff, and people end up hating our guts for it. It happens to every band. It happens to industries too. The skateboarding shoe industry get called sellouts because they chose to sell their shoes in large stores. And I think that is kind of odd. Be successful or don't be successful, and do whatever you can do to be the best you can be." Whether you like or dislike Blink-182, there's no denying the influence they've had on popular music. Pop-punk's golden period is rightfully regarded as the late 90s to early 2000s, and the same can be said for nu metal, which like pop-punk was huge back in 2001. Pop-punk and nu metal songs were often competing with each other for radio play on the rock charts at the time. That year in 2001, Eric Ice from Billboard magazine wrote the following in a review of The Rock Show. "As the face of rock radio has yielded towards the emerging hard sounds of nu metal, Blink continues to provide a contrasting voice with its peppy, lighter punk sound and quirky, often gross sense of humor. This time out, the tune tells of finding love in a great girl on the Warped Tour. Like the group's past hits, The Rock Show clearly shows the band's talent for writing and performing hooks. Blink has become a core act for most modern and even some pop stations, so expect The Rock Show to rock its way towards the top of the modern rock tracks. Though the song didn't reach the #1 spot, it did chart very high on Billboard's Modern Rock Tracks chart, peaking at number 2. As mentioned, The Rock Show was released as the first single off of Take Off Your Pants and Jacket, and although it charted better than the band's second single, First Date has proven to be the bigger of the two songs. As at the time of this recording, the music video for The Rock Show has approximately 71 million views on YouTube, whereas the music video for First Date has approximately 167 million views on YouTube. Now, to be clear, YouTube popularity is not an objective measure of the quality of a song. I'm not here making an artistic argument that First Date is a better song than The Rock Show. I'm just talking purely about popularity. I made a video about First Date. If you want to see that video, it's linked in the description box below.